This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is
the one that everybody wants, me.
Becky Lynch is going to WrestleMania. Claymore!
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
All right, everybody, welcome to the current state of WWE. I've got Anthony DeMarco with me tonight on this Monday, May 8th, as Monday Night Raw is being filmed right now. It is live right now. We are unaware of who is going to win or is winning the triple threat, the two triple threat matches, and the final person who's going to emerge from that as the person who's going to the finals. We have no idea. As always, just giving you a precursor because we're going to talk about the triple threat matches, the World Heavyweight Championship. So, Anthony, welcome to the show, man. How you doing, and how did you enjoy Backlash?
I thought it was a good show. I thought it was something that, a pay-per-view that over-delivered. I think that being in Puerto Rico set the stage for a very, very good and active crowd. And I think that WWE has been on a very good run with pay-per-views and the crowd reactions. Like, thinking back, the last pay-per-view that the crowd didn't really feel special was probably Survivor Series. But even at that, Survivor Series was branded as War Games. So the crowd had that extra incentive. And then the Rumble was in a stadium. We know what Montreal was for the Elimination Chamber, WrestleMania, Puerto Rico. They've just been doing a really good job under Triple H. And he has had his flaws. But one thing I have to say about Triple H's regime here is that every single pay-per-view has felt special under him.
It's a damn good point. You know, that is something that I don't think fans have really appreciated or have even realized they appreciate, is that under Triple H, even if the Raws, the regular weekly Raws and SmackDowns have been not always perfect, they're never going to have a perfect show. This is something that has been the staple of Triple H's. Every pay-per-view has over-delivered, whether it was in the ring or storyline or just doing the right thing booking-wise. That is one thing Triple H can hang his hat on under his guidance. And on that quick note, just so if you guys are interested, a CNBC article came out with yours truly in it. I have a couple of quotes. It's basically just talking about Vince McMahon and the merger with Endeavor and my thoughts on it. So you see a couple of mentions in there from me with our WWE podcast. So check it out if you want to take a look. I'll be putting it on my stories on Instagram, which you can find me at WWE_podcast, and on Twitter. So it'll be easy to find. If you want to just Google it, search CNBC WWE. And you'll be able to find it pretty quickly. So, but yeah, moving on to your point, yeah, I really think that's a great point to bring up. And without going into too much of Backlash, I want to ask you about the match between Brock Lesnar and Cody Rhodes, because that match was unexpectedly bloody, which I love and makes you just miss blood so much. And there's debate whether or not that was intentional on Brock's behalf. But ultimately, Cody gets the victory with a roll-up reversal of the Kimura, and he is victorious. What did you think about this?
Well, I thought that this was a match that they were going to have a tough time booking, because it kind of felt like a match that neither guy could afford to lose. And that might sound weird talking about Brock Lesnar, someone who's probably going to retreat back to Saskatchewan now until SummerSlam season, and a guy who is a made man and doesn't need victories. But I do think that there's something to be said about keeping the legitimacy behind Brock Lesnar. And save for his victory against Omos at WrestleMania, it had been a while since Brock Lesnar had won a legitimate one-on-one match, like a big name or a big, highly touted one-on-one contest. And thinking back to it, since he returned to WWE in the summer of 2021, I cannot remember a one-on-one match aside from Omos that Brock Lesnar has won. Even against Bobby Lashley, did he not? Oh, no, he did beat Bobby Lashley with that roll up in Saudi Arabia. But, he just hasn't had that one dominant Brock Lesnar victory in a one-on-one fashion since he returned. And that's why I thought maybe he was going to get the one up here on Cody, but they did a good job of protecting Brock with the roll up finish. And obviously, the blood added a lot to the drama of that match. I would argue maybe it would have been better to have Cody maybe lose another match and maybe have him face some adversity. And it's kind of like a long-term storytelling perspective, like really make the fans really want to see him get back on the horse and into the winning column. But I understand, especially with the impending tournament for the World Heavyweight Championship, which we're for sure going to get into now, you wanted to get one of your biggest stars back on a winning page and get some momentum behind them. So, I mean, it's something that I think they could have gone a bit differently, but ultimately it was the safest route to go.
Yeah, it was. And look, Brock Lesnar, should he be losing a match in real life to Cody? Of course not. But Brock Lesnar is not at the stage in his career that you need to protect him in a way that you're concerned about the future of WWE. Brock Lesnar, if he disappeared off the earth tomorrow, God forbid, the WWE would do just fine. Not to say he doesn't add, but he's not the future. Cody is much more the future, and he's going to be imminently in this World Heavyweight Championship tournament. And again, we'll get to that momentarily, but this is the right call because it also does protect Brock too, because it wasn't like Cody hit his finish and then Brock Lesnar loses as clean as you can possibly win. Or lose. And that's not what happened. So with this being a roll-up finish, I don't hate it. I thought it was the best possible outcome because while roll-up finishes are just hated generally among fans, it's simply because of its overuse and its crutch for booking rather than when it's actually appropriate and good to use a roll-up in this scenario. That's why I think some fans that didn't like the finish looked at the roll-up and go, oh, stupid roll-up. But you forget that there are scenarios where roll-ups actually make sense. And this is a scenario in which it made sense. It made Cody look like he didn't get lucky, but he outmaneuvered Lesnar without outright beating him. So it protects Lesnar in that sense. So I had no issue with this. And the match quality, of course, was physical, bloody. Love that. Any final thoughts on this before we dive into this tournament?
No, just that I think that it was a match that really over-delivered, and it made you kind of want to see more of Brock Lesnar versus Cody Rhodes. One of those matches that you didn't really know you wanted until it was given to you, and it makes you wonder if maybe they could have drawn out this program a bit longer and not just have had it as like a one-off following WrestleMania.
Exactly. So, all right. Well, let's dive into this tournament, man. I was wondering how they were going to format this in terms of competitors and who is selected and how these people were selected to be in the tournament in the first place. I doubt we're going to get that explanation. And it is what it is. So we've got now 2 triple threats. We've got one triple threat happening on Raw, another triple threat happening on Raw. And in the same night, tonight, those 2 individuals will compete at the end of Raw, I'd imagine, in the main event, and that person will be in the finals going to Night of Champions in Saudi Arabia to compete for the World Heavyweight Championship. I have no problem with this, except for the fact that SmackDown is now involved in the same way, 2 triple threats. Do you have any explanation, or can you give WWE a pass on this?
Well, it's tough for me to say because you literally just went through the process of splitting the roster. You just brought back the brand split. Triple H's first time heading up the WWE draft. And right off the bat, you are doing something that kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Circumvents it. And you're going to have a SmackDown competitor competing for the World Heavyweight Championship. Now, there is a simple explanation. Maybe SmackDown's officials didn't know about this tournament, and if one of these SmackDown competitors, and just looking at the list, I would imagine that the guy who has the best chance to win it is probably AJ Styles, maybe Edge, but like maybe if they win, then they could be the World Heavyweight Champion and just move over to Monday Night Raw simply. Simply, easy enough for me to say, eh? But the one thing that bothers me more so than this, that the SmackDown competitors are involved in this tournament, is the fact that you know that one of the SmackDown guys is going to be in the finals. So not only is SmackDown going to be involved in the tournament, you know that the finals is going to feature a SmackDown competitor. I've seen rumors of it being AJ Styles. Looking at the list, my guess is that it will be AJ Styles. But right off the bat, you're going to be going into Saudi Arabia kind of expecting the Raw guy to come out with the championship. And let's just, for argument's sake, say it's Cody Rhodes versus AJ Styles. You know, you can't say with 100% certainty that it will be Cody Rhodes, just because, like I said before, they could make it as simple as, okay, you won the World Heavyweight Championship, so you're going over to Monday Night Raw, and SmackDown will get like a compensation prize or what have you. But you're automatically going to be leaning more of Monday Night Raw, whoever that representative is, whether that be Rollins or Rhodes or what have you. So I don't know why they went down this road. I know that it's probably best for promotion, because you're going to be promoting the new World Heavyweight Championship and this tournament and the pay-per-view on both shows for 2 weeks straight here. But just from the perspective of predictability and just trying to keep the integrity of the draft that literally is going into effect tonight, I don't really understand why they went down this road.
Yeah, it feels, and I hate to say it, but it feels very Vince McMahon-ish to do something like this, where, you know, you immediately just violate the rules of the draft, which, by the way, the draft's not even in effect yet, and they already violated it. I mean, that's a record. And so I'm not saying Vince McMahon was directly involved in this decision. That's all speculative. But what I do know is, with SmackDown involved, it does really inherently take away from what the draft is supposed to be. Two separate worlds. Okay, everything's locked in place. On May 8th, we're good to go. Let's go. You stay here, I stay here, and we'll just do our own thing. And we're instantly, not even waiting a week, instantly having a cross-brand match. And that's going to happen at Night of Champions. And presumably, if the SmackDown person wins, they would come to Monday Night Raw, because Triple H told us this belt is for Monday Night Raw. It's going to be on the brand that Roman Reigns is not on. Thereby, the belt will be on Raw regardless of who wins, which means if it's a SmackDown star, they come to Raw. That's my assumption. I don't think it's going to be a SmackDown star regardless, so this is all just kind of, I think, WWE trying to make the best matches possible, and they want to have the best of both worlds, because they want to have guys on SmackDown that are not on Raw to be able to put the best matches together. And it's already their admission that they feel they can't have great matches with top stars without including both brands. It's already an admission of one of the weaknesses of the brand split. But that said, I mean, I would imagine it's either Cody Rhodes or Seth Rollins that wins this whole damn thing. Can you imagine that it's anybody else that wins this?
Well, it was so weird, because I literally thought that it was going to be Drew McIntyre, and he's not even in the tournament. And I thought that Drew McIntyre was going to win, and they were going to turn him heel, and then you were going to have maybe like a chase until SummerSlam of, let's say, a Seth Rollins or Cody Rhodes chasing a heel Drew McIntyre. But now that Drew isn't even involved, I think it has to be Seth. It doesn't feel like it's going to be Cody. Like, it feels like it's the too obvious choice, and I feel like they have more long-term storytelling to do with Cody Rhodes, and that his story is going to cap off in a bigger fashion, and it's weird to say that, but in a bigger fashion than winning the world title in Saudi Arabia. It feels like his story is going to be capped off by winning the WWE Championship at like WrestleMania or something. So I think it's going to be Seth Rollins. It feels like it's a slam dunk to be Seth Rollins in my mind, but it's either him or Cody Rhodes. Like, AJ Styles, I guess, is an outside shot, but I think that he's found a nice home over on SmackDown coming out of the draft here. But I would imagine, like, to be honest, the only guy that I could see winning it from the SmackDown side is Edge, because him flipping right back over to Monday Night Raw would hurt nobody. I mean, he would be back on the same show as the Judgment Day, so you'd have that to contend with. But to be honest, I mean, aside from those two, and I would say Edge has a better chance than any other Raw guy, just because I think that it's almost like a foregone conclusion that Seth and Cody will be the two winning their respective triple threat matches. So, I mean, aside from those two, Cody and Seth, that is, I'd probably say Edge has the best chance, just because I think that the other Raw guys don't stand a chance. And maybe because of Edge's part-time status, it would make it easier to just flip him back over to Monday Night Raw. And he has that history with the world title.
That's not a bad pick because, as you said, everybody else that is that was drafted between Theory, Styles, Lashley, Mysterio, and Sheamus, Edge is the one that makes the most sense if you're going to present the argument that somebody from SmackDown should win and come to Raw. Then Edge, absolutely, I have no problem with that. With Edge coming to Raw, but then again, we'll have presumably a absentee champion over on Raw, not to the same extent as Roman, but to some extent. I mean, I wouldn't imagine Edge is going to be doing house shows and every Monday Night Raw he's going to be wrestling, and WWE has told us this person's going to be a fighting champion. All of those boxes that WWE is trying to check with this champion seems to be either Seth or Cody, and I'm not trying to put the fear of God in anybody, but there is an argument out there to be made that Roman Reigns still wins this. Now, how, considering he's not in the tournament? What if there's an injury or the Usos or Solo attack somebody on SmackDown like Lashley or Mysterio or Edge or Sheamus, and that person needs to be replaced? All of a sudden, our replacement's a mystery man. Who's the mystery man, right? Maybe it doesn't happen on Friday, but maybe it happens in the actual tournament. I mean, who the hell knows? Where it could be Roman Reigns. And the argument for that is, well, WWE loves their first-time evers. What about the first ever, here's a mouthful, WWE Universal World Heavyweight Champion? I mean, it sounds insane, but the fact that they have already put Roman Reigns with 2 belts on, I don't think it's going to happen. Okay, I don't want anyone to think I'm advocating or predicting that, but do you think there's any chance at all that happens?
I don't think so. I just think you'd lose a lot of the trust in the fan base if you did something like that. It would be hilarious. It would be very bleeping hilarious. And I think you've said this a lot, that you almost just want to see it for what the reaction would be. But I don't think they're going to do that. I think they actually want to see what a Monday Night Raw will be with a world title for the first time in Triple H's tenure as the head of creative. Like, let's be real. Since he took over, there has not been a consistent world champion on Monday Night Raw. And like I said on our last show last week, it looks like he's trying to structure things, at least from a championship perspective, back to the way it was in the Ruthless Aggression era, where you had the world title and the IC championship on Monday Night Raw and the US title and the WWE championship over on SmackDown. So I think they really want to see what Monday Night Raw can become with Triple H running it and a world title all going on at the same time. And you look at some of the guys over on Monday Night Raw, a Seth Rollins, a Cody Rhodes, a Drew McIntyre if he returns, Gunther eventually when he moves on from the IC championship. They're going to need, like, they spent the past year really pushing Roman Reigns. For a bit, they had him, flexing between both shows, but it got old very fast. He almost became exclusive to SmackDown again very, very fast. And you saw Raw very much suffer from it. I think when Cody Rhodes returned at the Royal Rumble and he won and became the #1 contender, it kind of helped Monday Night Raw a bit. Obviously, the Bloodline was carrying both shows. But if you really do want to commit to a true and, for the most part, hard brand split, you absolutely need a world championship exclusive to Raw. So I don't think that they're going to ultimately give it to Roman Reigns, but it is a funny thought just because of all the points we laid out.
It would be, I'm sorry, part of me does, the sick part of me, the dark part of me does want to see how the crowd would react, right? Like, what would they do if Roman Reigns captures this belt? I mean, again, I don't think it'll happen for the reasons you laid out, but it's at least a hilarious thing to talk about. But that said, back into the world of reality, it has to be, to me, either be Cody or Seth. Now, if it's Seth, then I think the fans would absolutely embrace it. But if it comes down to a final of, at least on Raw, of Seth versus Cody, I mean, it's that I would imagine is going to be the final, you would think. And if it is, who do the fans cheer for? And on SmackDown, if I'm going to make a prediction who is going to be in the final, it's probably Edge versus AJ Styles versus Sheamus, or there's a lot of baby faces in this, so it's hard to hard to gauge. But Edge versus Austin Theory, Edge versus AJ Styles is also on the ticket for me. I think that those two are, Edge and AJ Styles could absolutely be in the final, and then it could come down to, my God, Seth Rollins versus AJ Styles at the event. There's really a lot of combinations, and none of them suck when it comes to wrestling quality for Night of Champions. So the one thing I've also laid out, and I don't know if you feel the same way about the championship, is remind people about the lineage of it, remind people what it meant, remind people who held it, because there's a lot of fans that think that maybe WWE just invented this out of nowhere, and they don't understand what it meant, and that it's not just the Universal Championship that they created out of nothing, that there is a lineage, and that's important. Do you think that they should do that?
Yeah, for sure. And coincidentally enough, that's going to be the topic of my retro this coming week. I was going to do it last week, but then we remembered that I don't record a retro on pay-per-view week. So that's going to be the topic for my show this week, and I'll go more depth on it. But just to kind of give it the cliff notes a bit, like, you look at the World Heavyweight Championship and who held that, and obviously it was the successor to the WCW Championship. But just looking at it in its WWE days, when they brought it back in 2002 to be the main world title on Monday Night Raw, the only singles championship that HBK won upon his return to the company in 2002 was the World Heavyweight title. The Undertaker has not held the WWE Championship since 2002, but he held the World Heavyweight Championship several times in the late 2000s. You look at the fact that the World Heavyweight Championship main evented WrestleMania on 3 occasions, I want to say. I believe it was WrestleMania 20, 21, and 24. You look at the iconic and historic feud between The Undertaker and Edge on SmackDown that was over the World Heavyweight Championship. You look at when Randy Orton became the youngest world champion in history, that was winning the World Heavyweight Championship. Like, these are all things that I think people really need to go back and realize what this title meant. And to your point, in 2016, they created the Universal Championship out of thin air with no lineage, no history. Why were we supposed to believe that this was put on equal footing with the WWE Championship? But to WWE's credit, they did a good job. Kevin Owens had a solid run with the title. Brock Lesnar held it for 18 months. He really legitimized it. But you can literally go back 25 plus years and look at the lineage of the WCW and later the World Heavyweight title, and it tells you all you need to know as to why you should care so much about this belt coming back.
I mean, well laid out, and I hope that WWE does something similar with just a couple-minute video package. With how good they are at putting video packages together, this should not be a big lift, and it's important because this is a title that you're telling us is on equal footing with the WWE and or Universal Championship that Roman Reigns is carrying, and it should be. And there is something to be said for who has held it in the past. That matters, even if it hasn't been around in the last 6 years, 7 years since they retired it and now bringing it back. So what? I mean, they've done that with the IC belt before too. And this is something that I think the fans need to remember and or be educated on about the World Heavyweight Championship. And when I think about it, to me, when I think of the World Heavyweight Championship, all I can think about is Triple H from what is it, 03 or 04 to 06? Like he held 02 maybe? It was at 02 or 03? He held it for like 2 years straight, it felt like. And so that to me, and Triple H did a hell of a job in Evolution carrying that championship. And you're right, Shawn Michaels in the Elimination Chamber winning it his first night and then shortly thereafter dropping it. But there are so many big names that have made careers off of this championship and helped make the championship. Namely, to me, Triple H is just imprinted on my mind with the World Heavyweight Championship on WWE. And so, yeah, absolutely. That's a great topic for this coming Friday's, retro show. And I just hope WWE does this because there is so much invested into this championship. You would hope they tell us how important it is and why we should care. So.
And for you, do you think that what they did by creating the Universal Championship and some of the guys who have only held that title as being regarded as a world champion, like let's say Finn Balor, or Kevin Owens, or even Goldberg, like when upon his return to the company in 2016, he's only held the Universal Championship. To be honest, Goldberg has never held the WWE Championship. He's only held the Universal or the WWE or the World Heavyweight actually. So do you think, because eventually I think we're gonna we're going to see the Universal Championship get retired in some capacity. Like eventually it's going to go back to just being known as the WWE Championship. It's going to be one belt, and the lineage you see on WWE.com will be of the WWE Championship. Before I go any further, do you think that's the likely road they take?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because, I mean, outside of like just they're different colors, they're identical looking championships. And I think that's confusing for fans. And I think I'm over seeing guys with 2 championship belts when they're telling us it's a single championship. Okay, we get it. Cool photo op. They've done it a million times. Great. If you're telling us it's one championship, stop with the 2 physical belts, you know. And again, outside of the way that they look, which is literally just a different shade of color. There is no, that's it. And I think having the WWE Championship prevail and just absorb the Universal isn't going to make anybody lose any sleep. I think that makes total sense because right now, in a weird way, there's 3 top belts, and even though Roman has one quote unquote championship, he has 2 belts, and now there's one on Raw, so thereby there's kind of 3. I don't like that. I want WWE to just create like you said, just create one belt, go back to WWE, and you can call it the WWE Undisputed Championship. Okay, fine. Like, you know, just get Universal out of there. They did a good job of, you know, building that up for what it was at the time with the brand split. Okay, the other brand has to have a belt. Fine. They did a nice job, but I think it's time that they cut down one of the physical belts with Roman Reigns.
And the other part about this is that you go onto WWE.com, and if you look at their champion section, it still shows Roman Reigns being the WWE champion and the Universal champion. Like, they're still regarded as 2 separate championships on WWE.com. So eventually they're going to have to regulate that. And this is the 3rd time that they've unified world championships. They did it in 2001 with the WWF and the WCW championship. Eventually it got made into the Undisputed Championship, and then slowly but surely it quietly just became the WWE Championship again, and it kept that lineage. And then in 2013 they unified the World Heavyweight with the WWE in the ladder match between Cena and Randy Orton at the TLC pay-per-view. It was known as the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. They unified the titles following SummerSlam 2014 when Brock won it, and then slowly and quietly it just became known as the WWE Championship. So I expect that's where they go with it again. But the difference is that the last 2 times they did it, you had the world title and its predecessor, the WCW Championship, being consumed by the WWE title, but it had all that lineage behind it, so we would always remember it. And guys who had only won those championships, like a Goldberg or like a Shawn Michaels, you would always regard it as a world title because of the lineage going back into the early 90s in the WCW days. And I believe it derived from the NWA World Championship. My question is that when we look back 5, 10, 15 years from now, will we consider a Universal Championship victory as a world title victory? And you look at some guys, like the runs that they had, like Seth Rollins in 2019 when Brock held it for 18 months from 2017 to 2018. Braun Strowman's a guy who the only world title he's ever held is the Universal Championship. The Fiend Bray Wyatt. Like, I'm just wondering, do you think that eventually, and in my opinion, inevitably, when they do retire the Universal Championship, it will be regarded on the same level as the WWE and now the World Heavyweight?
Well, there's certainly... Here's the thing. That's a difficult question to answer, only because, well, you and I and most fans would have no problem in WWE just getting rid of Universal, just going back to WWE on SmackDown and the World Heavyweight Championship on Raw. That's the cleanest, makes the most sense, and less confusing. But the problem is this, that WWE has put so much stock into the Roman Reigns run that since his run began with that Universal Championship that we're proposing goes away, I don't know if they would just dissolve it, because then if all of a sudden, like you're in your scenario where 10, 15 years down the line, we're like, well, did we regard it as a World Heavyweight Championship? You know, well, if they don't, if we say yes, and then that belt that Roman Reigns started his run with doesn't exist anymore, I think the fans may look at that, or WWE may say, well, we don't want to look back and go, yeah, the 500 out of the however many days, at this point 1,000 or 2,000, whatever it ends up being. The first 500 days of it did not or was with the Universal, and so why would we just dissolve a belt where 500 of those days were just with the Universal? That championship doesn't exist anymore. I could think that's the only argument against it. Other than that, I mean, to answer your question, if Roman Reigns' run didn't exist, I think that they would probably look at it as a world title victory. I think that they would, because that's how they treated it for years.
Yeah, I guess the reason I ask is because WWE has kind of muddied the waters a bit when it comes to world championship victories. Like, they'll say, like, Cena's a 16-time world champion. Like, well, a lot of those were the World Heavyweight Championship, so we are counting that as a world title victory. But that's the danger you get, is when you create a world championship out of thin air. The World Heavyweight Championship, they're just bringing back. Like, for people forget, they retired the Intercontinental Championship for like almost a year, I want to say, from 01 to 02. And they did the same with the US Championship. So titles can be retired and brought back. But the Universal Championship, they literally created out of thin air in the summer of 2016. And it never made sense from the beginning. To your point, in its inception, it was just the WWE Championship with a red strap. So it almost didn't even have like an identity of its own. And I guess that's why, like, I wonder if WWE, if they could have had a do-over, if they would have just brought back the World Heavyweight Championship in 2016 to place over on Monday Night Raw. And I guess my second question, or one of my numerous questions for you, would be, is do you think if they do a good job at trying to remind people of the lineage of the World Heavyweight Championship, that Raw will be able to feel as important as SmackDown has with Roman Reigns and the Undisputed Championship? Because we've talked about for so long now that Raw has really been behind the eight ball in regards to SmackDown because of the world title lacking.
Well, I think that's a multi-layered question. So first, I think Raw already instantly feels more important than it has in the past. Not just because there's a tournament and we'll focus on the tournament, but what's the ultimate result of this tournament is we're going to have a world champion. Thank God. Like, I mean, you and I have been advocating for that among other fans. You could hear the reaction when Triple H introduced it. Fans cheered. It was a big pop. And fans were ready to see somebody there on a weekly basis. And it's not just you and I on the podcast here. So that is already elevating Raw and does make it feel more important. But the second part of this, the second layer is, does this make it feel as important as Roman Reigns? To your question, I mean, not right away. No, I think what's going to make it feel as important as Roman Reigns' run is who's holding it and what storylines are they in? How is the crowd reacting to this proposed babyface champion? There's a lot of factors, and it's difficult because from a lineage standpoint, it's equal. I mean, the Universal doesn't count. I'm saying WWE and World Heavyweight. There's a lot of lineage there between both of them, decades of lineage, and going back, like you said, to WCW. So from a lineage standpoint, I think they're on par. But from an actual in the moment, what do I think about it in this second? Who feels more important? I mean, Roman Reigns has had such a long lead here that it's going to be tough for anyone to catch up to that feeling that they're on equal footing because of how epic this run has been. So it's going to take a long time, if it's even possible at all, for in the moment that person, that champion on Raw, feeling on equal footing to Roman Reigns, given how much lead time Roman has had with this belt.
I know it might be a bit of left field, but I just want to address it before we wrap it up. But like, I kind of brought it up before, but like, where the hell are they going to go with Drew McIntyre? Like, think about where this guy was 3 years ago in the pandemic era and before Roman Reigns returned to the Thunderdome. You know, Drew McIntyre was the straw that stirred the drink for WWE. He was the guy that carried them through the even the pre-Thunderdome era, like the Performance Center era. I don't even think we saw Roman Reigns do a show in the Performance Center. That was all Drew McIntyre. And he never got his moment. The runway ran out well before they got back in front of fans. And I'm just wondering, like, are they ever going to be able to rekindle the magic they had with Drew McIntyre just as COVID started?
That is that's tough because all the reports you've heard, I've heard, everybody, is that WWE and Drew are on separate pages when it comes to the next contract, because he's close to it. His current was expiring soon. Now, what date is that exactly? I don't know. I would imagine the next 30 to 60 days that his contract expires, and they seem to be on two separate pages when it comes to the two C's, cash and creative. And they seem to not be anywhere near one another, which is not good. And if they're at an impasse, then Drew will go his separate way with WWE. And if they don't, though, I'm going to go with the assumption that they eventually come together, they come to an agreement, and Drew stays with WWE. I don't know if Drew can get back to where he was. I don't know. Now, a heel turn is something that is fun to explore. Drew has been heel before. Remember, Shane McMahon, he aligned himself with Shane. He was like Shane's heavy for a while. I think it was during the AJ Styles program
he was his heavy, and that was in 2019, right when we were just starting to work together on this podcast, coincidentally enough, and he came really a long way since then.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, as you said, he carried the pandemic era. He is the face, sadly, and I mean this in a respectful way, but he is the face of the Thunderdome era, the pandemic era. He carried WWE, and I feel really bad for him, getting that massive elimination of Brock on the Rumble and then having his moment, and you're thinking, oh, my God, he's finally going to be in front of fans being crowned as champion, and he gets crowned as champion in front of no one. And I'm like, oh, my God, that's got to be so heart-wrenching for the dude, and I felt for him, but he really did an awesome job carrying the company during that time of just bizarre. It was bizarro world for all of us, and so I have nothing but respect for him. But he has come a long way. He just is he's the perfect example of a polished performer, leaving a boy, coming back a man. All of that is true. He just knows who he is. He knows his value. He's just a solid in-ring worker. He never has a bad match. He's always solid on the mic. He'll never blow you away and, just leave you jaw dropped, but he's just such an all-around. He's like he's an A guy. He could be a world champion at any time, and I don't think anyone would complain. But if he sticks around, I honestly, you may short term try the babyface thing, but honestly, if that doesn't work, I would turn him heel and give him a new fresh coat of paint. Because
you look over on the Monday Night Raw side, and I guess that Gunther is the top heel on the brand right now, because you have Seth, who's a babyface, Cody, who's a babyface. I guess if you count the Judgment Day, it feels like they're going to give Damian Priest a massive run. Like, do you think there's any chance Damian Priest comes out of this as the world champion?
No, not right now. I mean, that match with Bad Bunny, it was fine. It was good. I didn't have any problem with the match quality, but it wasn't meant to build Damian Priest. Even though he came out, I think he came out feeling a bigger star, and he was left out of WrestleMania season for all intents and purposes. It's nice to see him.
He's the forgotten child.
Yeah,
of the Judgment Day.
Exactly. And for him to get the spotlight with Bad Bunny and having a good match, it was important, and that's good, but it did not elevate him to World Heavyweight Championship contender status at all. Maybe if things continue, we could be talking a different tune next year, but right now, no, I don't think he's in the conversation to be a realistic competitor for the World Heavyweight Championship. Not the way that they've defined him anyway right now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just looking at the Raw card, and aside from Gunther, I don't see a top heel, and that's why if Drew does come back, and I'm hoping he does, I would imagine that maybe they turn him heel, because you look at Cody, he's going to stay babyface. Seth Rollins just turned babyface again. I mean, Finn Balor feels as stale as ever, if you ask me. I mean, it just feels like Drew would have the best spot to lock in a main event kind of spot, not to reiterate myself, if he were to turn heel.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. I mean, it could be the best thing he ever does. Kind of like Bianca Belair, turning her heel too would do effing wonders for her career. And like you said, with Drew, because fans will cheer him. He gets a solid reaction, but fans are kind of like, all right, we've seen this act. We're kind of ready for something new. Show us how nasty you can be. Remind us, because it's been like 4 years since Drew McIntyre has been a heel. I mean, it's time. Like, we're ready to see that side of him. It would instantly make him more relevant. He'd be able to work with top guys like Seth, like Cody, and it would be a lot of fun to watch. And he can work with anybody and always has great matches. So I think that's a really good solution for if they bring him back. And like you said, hopefully they do. But all right, well, I guess we'll wrap it there. But before we go, any final thoughts or plugs or anything that you want to mention?
Well, yeah, just I guess my upcoming show this week, we will be covering the history of the World Heavyweight Championship. And my last show, it was about a week and a half ago now, and I'm kind of trying to remember what I did. I think I
Was it
forgot.
JBL? Was JBL?
It could have been JBL. It could have, or was it Seth Rollins?
It was one. Yeah,
It was one of those two. It was JBL or Seth Rollins. But either way, I just think everyone should be on the lookout for the history of the World Championship. I'm not going to do WCW, so just from '02 to 2013. And obviously, I'm not going to get into the weeds, for so to speak. But I just want to kind of cover what we should be expecting and what the lineage was, because I think there's a lot of fans out there who probably don't remember what the World Heavyweight Championship meant to WWE.
Or like you and I, maybe those that have forgotten, right? I mean, I think it's been a while. So I think even those that feel like they're hardcore fans, I think it could do all of us, those that are new and quote unquote hardcore. It could benefit all of us to remind us the faces and names of those that held it beforehand. And I think that's going to do wonders for the World Heavyweight Championship tournament that is going on right now, presumably. So, all right. Well, very good. And I'm looking forward to your discussion later this week about the World Heavyweight Championship, the lineage of it. Very important topic and timely. So we will be chatting again in a week, and we'll at that point know what the finals are for this World Heavyweight Championship match.
Yeah, and we'll be able to preview the Saudi Arabia event. I just keep calling it the Saudi Arabia event because I always forget. It's Night of Champions, is it not?
Yes, it
officially
is. Yeah, Night of Champions, but I know anytime it's in Saudi Arabia, it like overshadows anything else. Yeah.
Well, it's because it used to be Crown Jewel, then they did they do an Elimination Chamber there too. Like they always change whenever they're going back.
The greatest Royal Rumble,
yes.
Where Braun Strowman won and it meant nothing. Yeah, all of that. Yes, they and the beloved Crown Jewel event that was one of the worst pay-per-views WWE's ever had, bringing Shawn out of retirement and people getting injured left and right. It was a disaster. Yeah, so there's something cursed.
Versus Undertaker.
Oh my God. Oh God, that's right.
I think that's the worst. Is that the worst match in history? Like, I'm not even joking. When you match it up against the expectations and the perceived star power to the actual in-ring result, it was that the worst match of all time.
It's so bad. That's true. I mean, in terms of expectation to result, yes. I mean, there's been some really bad women's matches, like really bad. There's been some awful celebrity matches, but if you're going to frame it as expectation and result, it's got to be in your top two. I mean, and considering that Undertaker literally almost was paralyzed or killed in that match, that should top our list. So, but definitely, guys, I would not recommend watching that pay-per-view. What I'd recommend listening to, though, is our show on Friday that's going to cover the World Heavyweight Championship. That'll get you ready for who is going to be crowned the new World Heavyweight Champion at the end of the month. So, all right, buddy, we will be chatting again in a week, so you take care.
Yeah, you too. Looking forward to it, bud.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.